back in 3, 2, 1, and everyone's just trying to squeeze in one more little comment to chat, but we're past the buzzer at that point.
Turns out Matt Schlapp is a big old predator. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Yeah, we're making fun of Matt Schlapp. It's hard to make fun of him.
When he's clearly like a horror movie person come to life.
Well, it's like his name in and of itself is insane.
Look at the picture.
Schlapp.
There's a picture. I can't remember when it was. I think it was like probably 8 or so years ago of him and Mercedes Schlapp in their dining room. And it's like, this is one place you need to make sure you are gone before the lights go down outside. I
mean, I honestly, look, these women are complicit, but I think about Michelle Bachmann too. And it's like, girlfriend, like, your husband's gay. Your husband's gay. Just move on with your life.
I think Mercedes Schlapp is as big of a monster.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, she's psycho.
I think a lot of these people are.
Though.
Yeah. Mercedes Schlapp.
Mercedes Schlapp. That's a great sounding name.
That is,
it really rolls off the tongue.
If you're like, I don't know, an 80s sort of comedy writer making a Nazi name.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like maybe like a regional rapper, like a regional Southern rapper, like Mercedes Schlapp.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
That's a subgenre of Texas hip hop.
Yeah.
Mercedes Schlapps. Like, but it is like a luxury car and then the most unattractive, like, brute last name you could think of.
It actually
Real
sounds
contrast.
like a name for like one of those new like spoken word rappers that are all over Instagram.
Yeah. All right, guys, gonna open up the phone lines. Let's see if this works. Fingers crossed. The number is 646-257-3920. Let's read some IMs. Southpaw Wielding. I have a volunteer meeting with Foods Not Bombs this weekend, and I've applied to be a community organizing committee member with my local county Dems. We are getting organized this year, baby. Love it.
Love to hear it. So much better than We're So Cooked.
Yes, right. I know. I don't need to hear that phrase again. It's one of those internet phrases that I feel like has worn out its welcome. Let alone the sentiment. WFTF. Cody, why aren't you inviting all the Majority Report members to your wedding? Rude. Yes, I'm sorry about that. CPG, great. I asked one Jalen Hurts question. Now ESPN is on hiatus. I'm sorry. Yes, you caused it. El Canipcion, Emma, if you see this message and the phones are working, I badly want to call in for my 210 area code. Okay, I will look for 210 now. Gotta say, there's a chance that it may not work, but we're going to try. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
El Canipcion from San Antonio. How's it going?
Yes, El Canipcion from San Antonio. Good to hear from you. And can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. We may have finally fixed the phones.
That's awesome. I get crazy anxiety every time I call in, but I know what I want to say. So,
you sound great. Don't worry about it.
Thank you. So the conversation I and Andrew Tate had me going and thinking. Something I've had in the back burner ideas of my mind for a while is the goal to approach masculinity and take it and reclaim it a bit from the right. I kind of wanted to call into you guys and kind of just pick your brain on that. I don't know if, like, maybe just to start, I could give you an example of what I'm talking about.
Sure.
From my own life, but I did want to know, have you guys seen that sort of Twitter conversation going around that, like, maybe there's some value to framing fascism as weakness? What do you think?
I mean, sure, I'm open to anything, but I haven't seen the conversation you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, I am generally okay with that. There's a guy who was Elon Musk's business partner, and they've had probably some drama between it, but he had a big long thread about why Elon did the Hitler salute, and part of it is because there are Jews he hates, like Sam Altman. But another thing is he knows that they right-wing parties particularly are easily led around and easily satisfied with just symbolic slop. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that it's exclusively right-wing parties that are doing it. I think he also surfed on a bit of greenwashing for the early part of his career. But ultimately, there's a lot of, frankly, people that they have not landed on a meaning for their life, and they've come to. We need to get rid of the Syrian refugees here if you're in Germany, or we need to get rid of the Mexicans or the Venezuelans here if you're American, and that is ultimately a debased level to have fallen to. It is not anything to be proud of, and that's why they have to always insist on things like white pride. They don't got it. They're simulating it. So ultimately, the fascism is weakness. It can also be exceedingly destructive.
Yeah. It's simplistic explanations for the lack of meaning that Matt's describing, and this has been the case of all fascist movements throughout history. So, it is but like we're seeing the effects. I mean, we're going to get more and more poll numbers with Musk continuing to drop in popularity. But keep going.
I think I just I don't know. One of the things I'm personally proudest of, I've always been very set in my masculinity. Like, I didn't have a lot of understanding of more than two genders growing up in a South Texas kind of conservative but kind of liberal place too. My former childhood best friend, a few years ago, we happened to be at a vacation at a beach house together, and he actually wound up sexually assaulting a young woman in the presence of everyone in this building. And I was the first one to go to him and call him out for that sort of thing, and he had to come to Jesus about all of that, and nobody's really friends with him anymore in our group about that. But later on, in the years since then, I've had a little bit of hashing it out with this guy who I really have no interest in knowing, but I do have an interest in trying to make him a little bit less harmful, because the thing is, right before he did all of this in that era, it was literally 2022, the spring Andrew Tate was blowing up, and I had some awareness that he was an Andrew Tate fan, because I made a joke about bottle water, what Andrew Tate says with his stupid half British accent, because that was a joke I picked up from H3 at the time, another scumbag. I just used that to. Anyway, I was doing that joke around a few of my friends, and this, my friend picked up on it, and I realized oh, I was joking on it. He thinks I'm being serious about being a fan of this guy. But anyway, I say all that to say, later on, one of the proudest things I did was going to him and telling him hey, what strong men do is look out for those who are more vulnerable and in harm's way than us.
Right.
And yeah, it really did. It did manage to talk him down for it. And I just say that. So I want to present that to you guys, and I'm just looking for a thought of how I could potentially approach this from a content standpoint in the future. It might be something I'd like to do. So I don't know how much further I have to say. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate the call. Yeah, we'll answer offline. I mean, it's difficult, but I think that was a great place to start. It's just about not. I mean, the Democrats do this with issues like immigration. Don't leave a vacuum for definition. And it's hard. For the definition of masculinity, it's difficult in capitalism because the right is always going to have more resources to pump out their message, but we still have to be diligent in doing our own messaging and counter propaganda, because that's what it is. But we've been hinting at this. I wanted to get to the polling here. YouGov, The Economist, came out with some polls this morning, or late last night, I forget exactly. Looking at Donald Trump's popularity, Elon Musk's popularity, and then also some shifts in public opinion as it relates to Israel and Palestine. I found some of this stuff fascinating. If we could just scroll through here a little bit, get your guys' take on this. Trump had a honeymoon period when he started off. He was over 50% approval rating, but it's dropping. So according to YouGov and The Economist, more polls will come out soon. But now he is sub 500 in terms of approval. We'll see. Or sorry, sub 50% in terms of approval. Here we go. More people strongly or somewhat approved of how he was handling his job as president, 49%, than disapproved, 43%. and he's still higher up. But let's scroll down to the Elon Musk part of this. Or no, actually go up here. But we are seeing some drops with certain demographics. This 18 to 29-year-old one, where you see, scroll up a little bit. No, I want to view the table. No. No, the age group, but just like I want to see the title, so I can't see it on the stream. So yeah. So views of Donald Trump by age over the past 6 months. And you can see from August 2024, this spike for 18 to 29-year-olds. I wonder if that's a methodology issue, because they may have harder time contacting this age demographic. We could just put a pin in that. But like, we do know that the Zoomers were a little bit more pro-Trump, particularly young men. Millennials still holding it down.
It'd be nice to have dates to that, because would it correspond to like what, TikTok ban, or?
It would correspond to the inauguration, which makes sense.
Is that January?
Yep.
That spike?
Yeah. And then the spike here, the big spike. Oh, maybe him winning the election.
Okay, right.
And then the other spike is the inauguration. And you can see how that kind of translates. But this was the same thing that held in the polling prior to the election, that millennials and then people over 65 are kind of not as supportive of Donald Trump, but it's the Gen X and Gen Z voters who are booing his support. But Elon Musk, let's keep going.
It's the kids and their parents. It's pretty clear that's how it's working
Suburbs.
out.
It's
Right.
the suburbs.
Millennials are the children of boomers. Gen Z are the children of Gen Xers.
Yeah.
It seems like that really is, to be honest with you, like part of the what's going on here.
That's a good point. Now, Musk's popularity, as I mentioned, is dipping. There have been multiple polls that indicate this. Elon Musk now, a majority of Americans view him somewhat unfavorably, 52%, and favorably, 42%, and his popularity has fallen in recent weeks. This share, who say they have an unfavorable opinion of Musk, increased 7 percentage points in the past week to 43% from 36%. So that's 43% and a 7-point increase in very unfavorable opinions of Elon Musk. Musk is increasingly seen as highly influential within Trump's administration. 63% of Americans say he has a lot of influence. That increased from 51% in the prior week's poll, probably buoyed by the fact that he did a press conference standing and Trump sat silently in the chair in the Oval Office, as Elon Musk described how he was taking a hatchet to our federal government. But then this is the other portion, the Gaza part, that is really fascinating. This shows basically how the Democrats also have to completely extricate the Israel lobby from their party. The chart below is more interesting to me here. So you're seeing that a lot of people just will say that they equally sympathize with both. More Americans sympathize with the Palestinians and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict than have in years. The increase in support, sympathy for the Palestinians, and the decrease in support for the Israelis, you can see that spike is October 7th. And it's been a gradual decrease for the Israelis, around equal. People who just both sides it, that remains the same. But look at the Democratic Party polling. This is a clear path forward for the Democrats. Like, Musk's popularity is going to keep going down. The chaos that the Trump administration is going to cause. Look, it's not inevitable that the Democrats win or whatever, but they have to be able to harness this. And part of that is basically standing up against genocide. Look at that. Democrats are more pro-Palestinian than at any time in the past 7 years. The majority opinion, according to this poll at this current moment, is to be more sympathetic to the Palestinians among Democratic voters. The Israelis, 9%. Now,
Down from the 35% right after October 7th, they completely blew any sort of they cashed in to do a genocide and cut some demographics down, frankly.
And so, like, can you think about how proportional that is to the support for Israel within the Democratic caucus in terms of representatives? And then ask yourself how sustainable this is. Because, like, when you look at that chart, 2024 is when that dip, I mean, you can see it wasn't at 9%, but it started to fall off really quickly after they began the active genocide. And during that whole period, you see 2024, look at that low number for the Israelis. Biden was running, and then Harris, building off of it, to appease a lot. This is not about, I hated this false notion that this was about like weighing pro-Israel voters versus pro-Palestinian or Arab voters. They framed it as if it was Jewish versus Arab voters that they were weighing these constituencies for. No, they were weighing the Israeli lobby versus what their voters wanted. And that shows it exactly right there, is that the voters, their base, were not supportive of what Israel was doing. And they pursued this policy anyway.
And I would suggest that the rise you see in support for the Israelis sort of creeping up before the election was Democrats sort of going along with the top of the ticket saying, okay, if we need to do this, we will support them. Once you see that it helped blow the election to Trump, people all of a sudden get a much more stark realization of how stupid Harris and Biden were over the past year.
Exactly. Right. And there's a cynical part of it where it's like, oh, now that Trump is presiding over the ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinians, there are Democrats that are against it now. Like people in my life who are registered Democrats who never talked about the Palestinians suddenly have an opinion on it now that Trump is in office. So you can be cynical about it, but it's also what Matt's describing. You know, you can't expect, frankly, there's people aren't going to be as engaged in politics as we are. So they'll usually go along with what their political party is advocating for. But even despite the propaganda from the Biden administration, you saw that shift in opinion, and they still pursued the policy anyway. So this was not about electoral politics. I just want to make that as clear as possible. This was about a Zionist ideology. Any thoughts, folks?
You're right. It was.
Oh, my two favorite words.
I think that was 4 words, but yeah, but I think you're the right part. But no, I mean, yeah, I think it was obvious at the time too. I think the argument that like Democratic voters were so in favor of this genocide just never really seemed to materialize in the real world. Like we saw how many pro-Palestinian protests there were. We saw how many like of the most active people who would have been on the Democratic Party side in 2024 were like subjected to all types of abuse at the hands of the police for protesting on college campuses. In the myth that there was like an equal or bigger side that was just like so pro-Israel, like never saw any of those, like any of that activism really. Like there were a few protests in favor of Israel, but nothing reaching the level that we saw from college campuses. So it was really just, you know, the Democrats trying to manufacture consent in pursuit of supporting, you know, not just Israel, but the military industrial complex, of which Israel is like one of our main satellites for like testing weapons.
Yeah, and intelligence and like, I mean, it was Anthony Lowenstein's book about the Palestine Laboratory, which talks about how the Israelis and by extension the United States and all these other weapons firms essentially use Gaza as a laboratory to test their most lethal weapons. And it's like, all right, these millions of people are there as lab rats for genocide.
Yeah.
So,
and I think this last genocide was them testing a lot of their AI surveillance technology that we would hear about every so often.
Lavender.
That will be used and subjected on the American people if it's not already being subjected on the American people. Not that makes it worse or better, but like certainly it's something that people need to be able to see those connections between like the things that we do in, you know, the Middle East and abroad, coming home to like be subjected against American people.
Yeah. Did you want to say something, Matt?
Yeah, I also just want to emphasize to people that the Democrat Party's not going in the right direction on this stuff. 2 key representatives that would be great in terms of speaking out against what Musk and Doge and Trump are doing, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, were removed in the primaries by record spending by Israel groups. And let's take a look at Wesley Bell in Missouri, see how dynamic this guy is, this Zionist plant, and think of just what we could have had if maybe Cori Bush was still there. And I get that there's people who want to rush to the conversation about how Cori Bush could have done better constituent service or whatever. I would rather look at the forest, and I'll leave other people to look at the trees here. But here's Wesley Bell. Let's grade this electric performance.
Representative Wesley Bell here. We've been getting so many calls from the office. We know people are concerned, and I want to talk about two things. One, what we have done, and two, what we need to do. And so on January 20th, Trump signed an executive order to abolish the doctrine of birthright citizenship. A federal judge blocked Trump's birthright citizenship executive order as unconstitutional. That doesn't happen without us pushing from public outcry, but also working with our stakeholders to make certain.
Stakeholders. So that's good. I think we
All
got
right.
the point there. Not quite Cory
Yeah.
Bush, is he?
No, not quite.
I love feeling like I'm at like a meeting at work and
I
being,
know.
being
Right.
chastised for like not meeting your profit projections for Q3.
Yeah.
Where's George Latimer at, by the way? Speaking of, where's George Latimer at? What's
I
he up
mean,
to?
his eyes are pointing in different
They,
directions.
they couldn't have given Wesley a prompter. I mean, he's looking down at his phone for his notes during a front-facing video.
It literally does feel like an all hands meeting at like the worst job you've ever had, which
So
is, by the
the
way,
expense
how the
reports,
Democrats
guys.
how the Democrats feel. Like, in part, Kamala Harris came off as a bureaucrat, and that's part of why she lost. And this is that same kind of thing.
They're talking about stakeholders. Like, we have all this talk about, like, ooh, don't use the word Latinx or whatever. They talk, like, Hakeem Jeffries was like, we need to do a new story about this is corporate speak. This is like how you get a job to differentiate yourself from, like, different Ivy League grads and places, is you tell a nice story. And you use words like stakeholders that don't offend anybody that has hiring powers. Like, it's bloodless. And it's, I mean, do we have more Hakeem Jeffries on, Stuart, or have we exhausted that?
we have.
It is amazing how they're talking, though. Like they're trying to like rally the troops with their opening line is "Attention, stakeholders and good billionaires." like, like what is going on? Like, who do they think? And then there's the reports of them getting mad at the actual grassroots organizations who are not even like lefty organizations, like grassroots.
Move on.
Liberal and progressive organizations who are the ones who line up to back Democrats all the time when it counts. They're even like, we can't deal with what Democrats are doing right now. And the Democrats, instead of trying to work out something to appease their literal base, not even leftists, their literal base, and they get angry that they're speaking out. Like, talk about complete. Well, you got multiple occasions now where Hakeem Jeffries is like, we can't do anything. There's nothing we can do. And then
Just Stunning writes in.
Goes,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I got mad at an IM.
That's what Eric Adams, and he's like, "Oh, I'll let the people in New York to handle that." It's like, what are you doing? Like, you guys, first of all, like, that's just ridiculous. It was the National Democratic Party that literally elevated Eric Adams to where he is right now. He was talked about like he was the future of the Democratic Party, and right now the entire city of New York is beholden to Donald Trump because he's dangling those charges over Eric Adams' head, because everyone should realize, I'm sure you guys have talked about it already, that those charges were dropped against Eric Adams, but with the ability for them to raise them again. So basically, Eric Adams, for however long he's mayor, is going to be beholden to whatever Trump wants. He's already told his own people, his own commissioners, not to say anything against Trump, not to get involved with anything regarding ICE. It is absolute mayhem, and the Democratic Party at a national level is MIA.
Yeah, Just Stunning writes in, where are the Palestinian protests for Trump's ethnic cleansing of the Gaza plan? This is what annoyed me. Actually, I'm a part of the Telegram channel in New York City for Gaza protests, so I get notifications about this. If you want to protest, look it up. There's a Bryant Park protest, I believe, this weekend. So actually, there are protests. And we are the constituency of the Democratic Party. We're in the base of the Democratic Party. It's expected that the party's supposed to respond to their base. Trump does whatever the base wants. They don't care about what we have to say. There's going to still be protests. But the reason there was outrage is because Biden is a Democrat. He's supposed to be advancing a more humanist agenda based on like what people vote for compared to the Republicans. That's why there was the outrage. And I'm really sick of this, like, you know, attack on the pro-Palestine demonstrators as essentially being like ops for the Republican Party. Give me a break.
That person is a Holocaust denier, essentially. This idea that these sorts of protests aren't going on, and you're not hearing about them because the Democrats aren't the target of them. So people like that you follow, the fucking freaks that apologize for a genocide for all that time, they're not hearing about it. But absolutely, people are still in the streets for this. But also, there's a goddamn ceasefire that Biden and Harris weren't going to be able to accomplish. So there's going to be a little bit of difference in terms of protest activity, because even though we all get it, man, and I'm sure the all the liberals that are pointing that out understand, like, yeah, it's really those people are Holocaust deniers.
But it just doesn't make any sense from even just like a complete like even like taking away like this is what's going on and these are the protests that are happening. It just doesn't make sense that you would complain that you haven't heard about it, because of course maybe you haven't heard about it, because they were doing those protests during campaign stops and campaign events during a presidential election season.
There was a protest at the Super Bowl.
Out there holding rallies right now. Then there was someone at the Super Bowl who literally
active protest at the Super Bowl.
Right. Staged the pro-Palestine, pro-Gaza protest. I mean, if you're not hearing about it, it's A, because you're not paying attention, and B, they're not being covered because these things aren't happening at campaign events, so they're outside of what mainstream media is covering. Like, and Trump's not doing rallies. Like, Trump has been MIA himself. We've been hearing more from Elon Musk than Trump. Trump hasn't left his little room at the White House or golfing wherever he's been golfing, and he's completely been really missing in action. No big rallies from Trump because it's not an election season.
Let's get to a clip and we can continue this conversation if that's okay, Brandon. We can keep talking.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah. I think this is a good segue just because this interview on CNN, so Scott Jennings is their in-house, basically Trump supporter, and he wears the Israeli hostage pin every single day. He's a Christian Zionist.
Nazi.
And he's getting more airtime because Trump is in office now. And it's important to point out that he's a Christian Zionist because that is a major part of the political force in this country that is supportive of Israel. Zionism is not an ideology that is inherently connected to religion. It is a settler, colonial, secular ideology that can cross religious beliefs. Biden is a Catholic Zionist. Almost the entire Republican Party are filled with Christian Zionists. There are also Jewish Zionists. That is absolutely true. But they get the outsized attention because Zionism tries to conflate Judaism with Zionism in order to protect themselves from criticism about things like committing genocide. I think our audience knows this, but if you're coming to this for the first time, that's the way for you to combat things like accusations of anti-Semitism when you criticize the settler colonial genocidal ideology of Zionism. Now, Jennings is on here on CNN debating this, and the level of arrogance that he displays here is astounding. He's speaking to Rula Jebriel, and she's a Zateo contributor. She grew up in an orphanage in Jerusalem. She's an Israeli-born Palestinian and an award-winning journalist and activist on this front who has been doing this work for decades.
Great journalist.
So Scott Jennings is going to tell her why she's wrong.
President Trump, again, today suggested that the United States would have ownership over Gaza. And he said it when he was sitting next to the King of Jordan. So how is that being interpreted?
I mean, I think the Arab League convened immediately a summit, and they immediately rejected en masse the whole idea. He cannot own Gaza because it's not his. Plus, you know, Gazan and Palestinians' right to return and live in their own country is enshrined in international law. What President Trump seems not to understand, the international law is not option. And it's not an option for Putin or for him. And the worst thing that he is now threatening to withhold aid from two major allies.
Although he did
Jordan
walk that
and Egypt.
back. I was just going to ask you. I mean, today he suggested, okay, maybe we won't do that. We won't have to go that far.
Because he understood it's about it's not a charity. This is what he didn't understand before, and he understood it today when the King of Jordan explained to him this was about a peace and security deal that these two allies actually signed with the United States, and they were the first actually to normalize relationship with Israel. The first actually to stand up when the Iranians sent the missile in April. Who stood up to that and basically shut down the missile? It was Jordan because of that peace deal. If we decide that that peace deal is null and void, all hell can break truly loose, and then you will find yourself in a war with 400 million people in an entire region that today reject that proposition. Not only because it's illegal, but because simply this is the same argument and the same issue that triggered all of this conflict for the last 75
this
years.
is not the first time actually that this has been put on the table, and the first time it was pretty disastrous what occurred afterwards.
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, the reason we're here with this hostage situation this weekend is because Hamas decided to stop participating in the deal that was brokered as Donald Trump was coming into office.
Actually, the Israeli newspapers today says that Israel violated the ceasefire.
I know what your position is. I know what your position is.
It's not my position. It's the Israeli newspaper and the New York Times and Israeli politicians.
But our ally is Israel, and you can't trust Hamas.
But our allies violated the ceasefire.
And who started it in the beginning? Who started it?
Israel.
Israel violated the ceasefire, killed 100 Palestinians.
Let me let Scott finish, and then you can go.
We're here because Hamas kidnapped, raped, and murdered, and now they're violating this deal, which wasn't even a great deal to begin with. It did get a few people back, which I'm sure is the best of what we're going to see. And so what Donald Trump is trying to do right now is get this thing moving again, because these people need to come back. That's number one. Number two, I think he just wants the other states in the Middle East to do something.
They already
and to
offered
take
him to do
ownership
something.
of some people here, to take responsibility for their own region, and I hope they do.
Well, can I say something?
Their own
Responsibility for the There's the only one that actually put the proposition on the table 4 times, and this is where it's honestly you don't know what you're talking about, and I'm sorry to say,
No, I think
President
I do.
Trump
And
doesn't know
I'm
what
sorry that you and I disagree, but I have a position, and it's valid.
There is an Arab Peace Initiative that is already on the table. The Arab Peace Initiative was put in 2002, 2007, 2017, and 2024. 57 Arab and Muslim countries together told the world at the United Nations this year, again for the 4th time, they're willing to guarantee Israel's security. They're willing to reconstruct and rebuild Gaza and pay for it. They're willing also, basically, to normalize all of them together with Israel on one condition: end the military occupation that's been lasting for 58 years.
All right, Rula, go ahead.
Yeah, it was so worth it to play that whole exchange. One, her thoughtful explanation at the beginning, then his just reflexive. Did Hamas start this? I haven't heard that from Zionists over and over again. That repeated lie.
Israel provoked October 7th with their occupation.
Yeah, I mean, there is no doubt about it. The year that October 7th happened, 2023, Israel had broken a record for how many children, of the Palestinian children that it had killed, let alone the fact that Palestinians have never been given don't have political rights. They voted for Hamas, 18 years ago, and then it was prevented from them having another election again. And Israel funded Hamas because they were useful opposition to them. In the West Bank, they are not allowed to be full citizens, even though over 3 million people there are under full Israeli control. And then there's the other thing where it used to be about how, the PLO walked away from the table. We have no choice to subjugate them. They didn't take the deal that we offered them, which allowed us to reinvade.
Sounds familiar.
And now Israel is slaughtering people in the West Bank, escalating it. They have committed violence against people in Gaza in violation of the ceasefire deal. And they are currently bombing Lebanon, attacking it in violation of their deal with Hezbollah. And what she describes there is the fact that, yes, the Arab states did come together and essentially say, in conjunction with multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions that back up exactly what they're saying, that they want to normalize with Israel as long as they end the military occupation. Over and over and over again, that has been said. And the right is having a hard time continuing to portray the other side as unreasonable because it's on our phones, but it still is about They're so savage. Why won't they accept us? They're so irrational. Why won't they accept us? And it relies on a dehumanization and a demonization of an entire group of people that, by the way, Donald Trump is at the helm of when he essentially talks about ethnically cleansing nearly 2 million people from a land that is theirs and talking about moving them like you would move your desk in your living room or your couch in your living room from one side of the room to the other.
You know, I want to comment, you know, Scott Jennings performed as you would expect. He's a dumb pig. You know, he's going to squeal. I was surprised to see Bakari Sellers on that panel because I have a few things to say about him. And it comes to like the issue we have to get Zionists out of the influence of Democratic Party politics. Bakari Sellers, someone people might have seen on CNN a lot. He was in 2010. Time featured him as a 40 under 40. In 2012, Politico named him one of the top 50 politicos to watch. He was a HBCU top 30 under 30 in July. How did he get to be so prominent? I would suggest it's not unrelated to what he was doing in college, which was Sellers is a prominent African-American supporter of Israel. He first attended the annual AIPAC conference while serving as a student body president at Morehouse College. In 2016, he authored a letter signed by 60 fellow African-American politicians urging the Democratic Platform Committee to keep the same language, refusing to include the statement that Israel is engaging in a, quote, occupation of Palestine that appears in previous Democratic platforms. Bakari, sorry, the name isn't AIPAC.
I mean, might as well.
On October 8th, or October 7th, he tweeted out this: "The news coming from Israel today is horrifying. I condemn Hamas and their Iranian backers for this despicable terrorism. No country would tolerate this." I mean, which country would tolerate, you know, Gaza conditions? I wonder if Bakari against this. "I strongly support the sustained actions Israel must now take to defend itself, to protect its people from terrorism." Bakari Sellers has been on AIPAC's list for his entire public career. He knew what was coming, he supported it, and he set the groundwork for it. And what's he doing in the background of this, as Ruler Jabil's being attacked by a fucking Christian Zionist, is he's laughing about it.
He's a contributor there. He knows. I mean, he's closer to Jennings. They work in the same place. But she comes in and says some truth, and it makes the Zionists uncomfortable. New
PAC, this is a Kayla Lacey Intercept 2022. New PAC, backed by Bakari Sellers, plans to spend $1 million to unseat Representative Rashida Tlaib. I mean, people like Rula Jibril have to go into studios with people who are bot hacks for a genocidal government, and they just have to act like, oh, you're on the same side as me. As they sit there and do jack shit as Scott Jennings gets to attack her, it's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I don't know. Like, I would say that it's an improvement that they actually have a Palestinian on their program. I mean, what is this? Like, Abby Phillip at the very least has had some of these discussions, and she had Mehdi Hassan to come on and talk about this. Like, that was when that racist attack.
Ryan Gradusky said,
yes,
"I hope your pager doesn't go off."
Do you guys remember that? When that was that same panel discussion. He said, "I hope your pager doesn't go off." I mean, this is the level of.
Why is he back?
He's not back, but that was Ryan.
Guy, right?
But
seems like the same thing.
But I mean, either way, like we still as a nation are living in an extremely racist and dehumanizing time for Muslim people. And that includes, as we all talk about representation, which is important, we have no Palestinian representation that is respective to like the importance of this issue in our media. So good on CNN for at least having her on, but like
clean house.
Yeah. So this one I wanted to get to 10, Bradley. So here's Dana Perino. She's supposed to be one of the most like reasonable and responsible Fox News hosts. We'll see if everybody in the audience agrees with that assessment after they see this clip.
Former press secretary for George W. Bush.
Certainly. Yes. You'll be surprised to hear she's a blonde woman. So unions are currently suing on multiple fronts, federal workers unions, but also teachers unions are suing the federal government because Trump is saying that he just wants to get rid of the Department of Education. Elon Musk says he wants to just delete it. The implications of this are widespread. It would particularly affect the poorest communities among us who may not have the property taxes in the area where they're from to fully fund their public schools. That's where the DOE fills in the gaps. And also with children with disabilities, whether it be physical or learning disabilities, that's where this money goes towards. Musk is saying he wants to delete the whole thing. And Dana Perino on Fox News is backing this up and attacking in particular the unions who are trying to fight against it.
The other thing is, for example, last night on CNN, they had a segment that read, "We are 3 weeks into Trump's second term, and there are warnings that the U.S. is dangerously close to a constitutional crisis." But they've been saying this so long that it's become the boy who cried wolf. I just want to mention one other thing. I think there's a new nemesis here that people need to think about, and that is government labor unions. These are labor unions that are formed for government employees, and then they work against the American taxpayer who's paying their salary. So a lot of these lawsuits and things where they're going to try to gum up the works and slow things down go back to government labor unions, and people ought to pay attention to that.
And they also dominate, I mean, they donate strictly to Democrats.
100%.
And Richard has a lot of late fees on his credit card. I think we found that out.
No, well, I mean,
so just pay your monthly balance, Richard. It's going to be fine. We don't need.
There you go. Unions, federal and public labor unions are the enemy. Does she feel that way about police unions?
No. That's different.
Waiting on that. That's different, I guess, guys. But the number of unions that are suing the U.S. Office of Personnel Management and DOJ include the AFL-CIO, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the American Federation of Government Employees. These are apparently all the enemies, the people that are career public servants that are a part of a union in the federal government. Moderate Republican, basically by the standards of Fox News, Dana Perino has said that they're the new enemy. So there you go.
Well, yeah, I mean, she can combine, the right and capital's maybe two biggest targets, like labor union, organized labor, and federal employees. It's been decades of trying to, antagonize and to make I should not antagonize, but to make the antagonists of our society, those types of groups. They want people to be cheering them on as they make working conditions in America worse, and as they make the public sector in America worse, because that's the way they'll justify doing it. That's austerity politics 101. You just make the civil servant the enemy because people are so alienated from the government that they have no idea what the civil servants do at the government. Right.
And then Elon Musk claims he's being transparent. There's nothing on this Doge website. Oh, I posted all to X.com. Dude is, according to Today, and his, Nazi Groyper minions are rifling through NASA at this current moment. And Elon Musk receives a bunch of contracts from NASA. It really is an incredible thing to see. The deployment of the word corruption as they do the worst corruption I've ever seen in my life. Nothing has meaning anymore. We saw kind of a preview of this with Lula down in Brazil, where trumped up corruption charges imprisoning him so a far right leader could ransack the government for his own ends. Except, I mean, this time it's they already had. I mean, it's the tech bros and their monarchical vision of a single unitary leader to dismantle democracy for something better. It feels like they already kind of ironed out the kinks and they're prepared to do it immediately. Despite court orders. These unions are suing. There was a judge that said they didn't have standing, even though this is mass firing affecting this workforce. But hopefully that gets challenged in other areas, because of course it does. Sam yesterday, I wish I could have been there for this interview, but he had a federal worker on who talked about she doesn't know if she's going to be fired. She doesn't know if she's going to be able to make rent, and that she got her master's degree learning about labor law because her entire life's goal was to work for the NLRB and for the government, and she was content doing that. And now, I mean, Musk just goes out there and goes, I'm going to delete it because he doesn't want unionization at Tesla or in his other business ventures. It's incredible. It's incredible to witness, and not in a good way. And the normalization by the right. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and, you know, even with the lawsuits coming out, like, it still has at least partially the same intended consequence, which is that all of this chaos, all of this instability makes people leave the federal workforce. It will have the impact of making people uncomfortable in their job because they're being targeted by online Nazis and you know, at least 50% of the political system and Republicans, and they'll just get a different job. Right. I think, you know, a lot of people in America don't understand really like what the government does or what function they do, and are just, you know, just generally very entitled when it comes to thinking that those things will just happen with a smaller government. Right. But, you know, people don't have to work for the government. There are other jobs they can take. It's a good job. That's what I mentioned in my last stream, that, like, you know, cutting down on government workers is a way to cut down on the middle class, you know, jobs that can still have you get like a retirable pension. But, you know, people don't have to teach your kids if they don't want to. They can just like take a different job somewhere, like where your kids, you know, won't be yelling at them in school. Like, they don't have to work for and deliver your mail. They can get a different job. And Americans aren't necessarily prepared for a world where, like, you know, their fellow human beings just don't want to work in civil service because, like, look at who they're serving. Like, people who want them harassed, people who want them, you know, to like be like castigated online. Not to mention with just like the fact that people have to pay bills. Like, I'm sure a lot of civil servants have to are looking into like jobs in the private sector for the first time, just by nature of the fact that, well, I have bills to pay. I can't be doing this on just my largesse.
Yeah, right. And I think Musk or Trump, I forget who, has expressed the stated goal of putting these people back into the private sector.
Yeah,
that's what. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, like, they want a labor surplus. They want to drive down the wages in the private sector. I think they've been very clear that wages are too high in the private sector. That was what the H-1B visa conversation was about too. It's like, you know, it seems crazy because there are so few jobs in America that you can work that will give you like a living like wage now, but they want to get rid of those jobs too. They like. I'm old enough to remember when they would tell you, like, hey, if you become a software engineer out of college, you'll make $90K. They want to end that. They want that to be $60K, and they want your house to have no value anymore. So, like, you know, they're trying to drive what little middle class in America, you know, still has into like abject poverty, because it will make a more precarious workforce, you know, and it's, you know, a decent portion of Americans are cheering it on, which is frightening. You know, it's frightening to watch Americans cheer on like RFK Jr. becoming like, you know, the head anti-vaxxer. But I will, you know, remind a lot of people that, you know, this phase of like American population, like parroting libertarian talking points as though they serve the average suburban dad. We've seen this before. We've seen this in the crypto industry when the line's going up, everyone wants to have freedom of their own currency. Everyone wants to decentralize the banking, and, you know, regulations are just getting in the way of me earning money. Then when like the line goes down, people are desperate to call the government. You know, and the same thing will happen when people start, you know, people's children start getting polio. They'll be desperate to figure out like who they can call to like solve the problem, because they're, you know, despite complaining about the government, still used to it generally working the way it's supposed to. And we saw that too with COVID-19, when people didn't want to get the vaccine because they were listening to far right radio show hosts. When they were on their deathbed, drowning in their own fluids, they were begging for that vaccine. And that is what, and it's, I mean, it's funny, but that is what happened, because Americans have been subject to 40, 50 years of neoliberal propaganda that tells them that they don't need the public sector.
Take your government
can do.
Hands off my Medicare.
My healthcare. And so like they believe that because they've been conditioned to believe that. And when that stuff goes away, we know what happens to them. They just some of them like cry out for the government to come back. And then like anyone who's been scammed, a decent portion of them just go away and slink into like the, you know, the cracks of society, because they're too embarrassed to like mention like, oh, I got scammed by Elon Musk. I believe that this billionaire was going to do the right thing. The only people who will say that are like, you know, people like Joe Rogan, who like supported him publicly and then go like, well, I was tricked too. Like then you'll hear those people, but you know, they won't be suffering from the same problems.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing it right now. It's certain cohorts of what came together to be the winning Trump ticket. For example, right now, one of the largest cohorts regretting their Trump vote and being vocal about it online are like tech people of Indian background. You're seeing a bunch of them come up now, say like, "Oh, I think we backed the wrong horse. I think we made a mistake." It's like, well, yeah, no shit. I mean, they didn't even wait for Trump to take office before they were talking about sending you guys out of the country. I mean,
but
it is
like Binder,
unbelievable.
when I hear that, I'm sorry. Like, what other like these are not? That's a different cohort of people who voted for him on economic reasons. But like, they voted for it. It's hard for me to think it's nothing but except like misogyny and racism. Like that. I mean, that's that. What else is the explanation?
He's not talking about me. I'm different. I'm the exception. I mean, you see
everyone's the exception.
In every community.
That's neoliberalism. Like everyone's the exception. And also like we have to understand too, with the way in which our trademark leftist party, the Democrats, like argue about the economy, they allow a lot of these things to be mediated through the lens of the culture war. And then they don't even have a good response for that. Like the Democrats' messaging falls apart when people aren't doing well, and they don't even try to establish the basic infrastructure within our society that would ensure that their message would have like the best chance of landing, because they're still like just tittering around the edges. The Republicans have no problem saying, like, acknowledging that people have less money in their bank accounts, and then they just tell them it's because women are in the workplace. And that because Black people are in the workplace, and because like we have immigrants in the country, and people can recognize that they do have less money in their bank account, and then they can recognize that women are in the workplace, and sans a real explanation that actually implicates like the real causes, which is capital, then people are just going to like take whatever response that they have. So I understand like why some people think that it is so the sexual revolution is causing their alienation, and not just the fact that they're having to work like 80 hours a week to make bare minimum, but like that's just a lack of messaging on Democrats' party side, which is what we're seeing now too, with like we mentioned the activists like calling into the office for I think it was Move On and Indivisible were calling, and they have the same question people had before the election. It's like, what are you guys doing? And that's a theme of the Democratic Party's failures. Like no one seems to ever be able to tell you what they're actually doing in any real sense, except for like a handful of meme accounts online that have like, a few like images, heavily credulous images. They go like, oh yeah, Biden passed all 90 of these bills. And it's like, yeah, but if no one can recognize the impact in their life, then either they have a significant messaging problem or they just didn't do enough. And so like, what's the point?
Well, they did have a messaging problem in the sense that Biden couldn't communicate for like the back half of his presidency at all.
That's a messenger problem.
I mean, that's literally a huge problem. He didn't use the bully pulpit. Yeah. That is in an internet age where you have to go viral and you have to get your message out there. Our president couldn't talk, and now there's no leader of the party, and Hakeem Jeffries is going and cozying up to Silicon Valley, and like we have to. Binder, I'll give you. I just want to get this thought out. Like,
yeah, go ahead.
If there's another election in 2028, if the Democrats need to elect somebody who's going to go in there and take a hammer to the billionaire class, and like. Do you think use the way that Trump is using his presidency? Don't ignore the courts, but unless you can find an avenue to do something good for people, the destruction that's happening in just a month with our administrative state requires actual urgency that I'm just not seeing from the Democrats right now at all, save for a handful of people.
No, absolutely. I think, talking about messaging, it's a huge part of it. And Democrats consistently like drop the ball. And you know what? Like even with Biden, with his diminished mental capacity, that's not even the excuse. What stopped them from literally like putting up big poster boards with Biden, showing exactly what they did and like with graphics, making it very simple and have him just stand there. I did that. Like he doesn't need to talk. Like literally, they would not, like that's just a silly example I'm giving, but they do not get it across to the American people that this is what we did. And, there's plenty of stuff more they can do. Don't get me wrong. This isn't giving them a pass. But the good they do, they don't take credit for. And when they do take credit, it's in like wonky political fashion. Like there's a skill you learn in storytelling as someone who, went to film school, where like you gotta beat people over the head with things sometimes. Like you have to write the script, the storyline for, honestly, what you conceive will be the stupidest members of your audience. Because if they're not understanding it, there's a good chance that other people won't understand it, and then your message is lost completely. And Democrats don't even do the bare minimum of getting that across, let alone angling that message towards like people in a way that they could understand it. Like, it's just a failure in all aspects.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just one last thing I'll say, and I agree, the Democratic Party does have a messaging problem, but I do think it's downstream from their ideological problem, and that is the result of them being neoliberals at the establishment level who are beholden to capital, and so oftentimes they are embarrassed by the fact that as politicians, they are supposed to be advocating for the public sector and what it can do best to alleviate the struggles of everyday Americans, how it can establish the certain tangible qualities in the future through the expansion and the creation of various administrative and bureaucratic agencies. But as neoliberals, they just don't believe in that stuff very much. You have a few Democrats who really believe in that stuff on some across the board, and then someone like a few key issues. But generally speaking, like, their ideology is one that makes them just not suited to advocating full-throatedly for a robust public sector, and that's what we need. And instead, they, I think it seems like clear to me that they are spending their time trying to recourt the billionaires who have left the party, because these billionaires understand where the average American is going economically, and they want to try to consolidate their wealth in ways that are going to be a little bit more aggressive than perhaps the Democrats are willing to do. And they're hoping that the American people see how bad Trump makes their life in the next 4 years, and just vote for them anyway. And it's a sad state of affairs, but at least there are a few Democrats who seem to be trying to whip up support for, I don't know, anything else.
Yeah.
Like, did you guys see this story? You might have even covered it. I'm sorry, but it is this morning in Popular Information about Trump's executive order leads to $100 energy bill hike for hundreds in Alabama.
I saw it was in our news packet. I had like a million headlines, so it's hard to pick. But yes, I did see that.
This is a perfect example of listen, I don't know how these people voted. This is affecting people who are the beneficiaries of a grant that assists low-income residents with their energy bills. Honestly, based on that, it's a good assumption to think that they didn't even vote, honestly. But regardless of how they voted, people should be out there, the Democrats should be out there highlighting this, saying, look at what he has done. Is this helping you with your groceries? Is this helping you with your cost of living? No, it's making things worse for you. And this is in Alabama. Honestly, the people who will be most hurt by a lot of what Trump is doing are people in red states. And and just complete silence. Even the mainstream media is not covering this. How is this not red meat for people who want to point out, which should be the Democrats, exactly what Trump is doing to the people who voted for him, may have voted for him, people who might be the neighbors or family members of people who voted for him. This is insanity that no one is touching this.
I know.
We mentioned it before, but it's like, take the Laken Riley Act, for example, and it's not as if that's not a tragedy in a vacuum of an anecdote about someone being murdered. At the same time, the party that always likes to act as if it's such a galling thing to do to politicize a tragedy will politicize literally any tragedy to so as to galvanize their base / win something politically. What if the Democrats literally made an act for every single agency that was being either shuttered or defunded and made an act for a person who is, negatively affected by the shuttering of those agencies?
Do you remember when Representative Alan Grayson went on the House floor and said, I think that was him, that the Republican plan for healthcare is for you to die? What if the Democrats sponsored an act every time somebody died for lack of healthcare because they couldn't afford their cancer coverage?
Right.
There are planes falling out of the sky.
Someone in the Democratic Party hired Vigeland for that one.
Yeah.
I mean, even I guess there are planes falling out of the sky 3 days.
There's like a plane crash every other day.
Every
basically,
day,
it's
and
insane.
even like it just seems like political malfeasance not to at least mention that. Like you might say that, oh well, Trump didn't do that. It's like I don't know, he did, fire all of those people and freeze hiring and like lower standards and all these things. Like who's to say who did it? Like the way they talk about immigrants, they should talk about the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Oh, also, why do they care about making that connection? They're not outright saying he's doing it, so they're not lying. Just say, why is this happening under Trump? Why could it be because of this? Like the idea that they're not willing to get in the mud. Like he's out there with Elon Musk saying, just lying about where your federal, the taxpayer money is going and what federal
He's saying that
programs
Biden
are
did
going.
it.
Like he's lying. They're straight up lying, and they're taking credit for things Biden did. They're talking about how they uncovered $2.7 trillion in federal waste or something like that, and then you find out where this $2.7 trillion number comes from, and it came from an actual audit that happened 6 or 7 months ago last year under the Biden administration, and no one's in the Democratic Party is even standing up and saying we did. They won't even take credit for things that they did that other people are taking credit for. This is ridiculous. Like they don't care. Like just go on vacation, go away. If you're not going to even pretend, then go away. Like don't even pretend. Like let someone else step in. Like I was telling people this, like I was saying, this was like one of my number one ways to try to like convince people that like, you should just go out and vote for whoever the fuck the Democrats had decided to run in 2024 in those last couple of months before they even announced Kamala, is because you not voting for these people doesn't hurt them.
Yeah.
Like they gotta be masochists to still want to do this, because when they lose, they just go away on vacation forever. They just live a wonderful life they don't go to work. You're not putting them back to work. They don't sit there going, oh, I lost my position. Whatever will I do? I'm so hurt. No, they'll make more money than they were making in office, honestly. Biden got signed by a talent agency.
Well, the accelerationists thought that you could punish them, and they can't be punished because they blame the left regardless. But we learned this in 2016. It just doesn't work. But I just saw the time, guys. I'm so sorry we won't have time for calls. Righteous rant, though, by one Matt Binder there. We'll get to some calls tomorrow.
It's unbelievable. It's just driving me up the wall.
It's driving me insane, too. I mean, I think Sam, we got us... call Richie Torres and apologize for hurting his feelings, as Sam advocated for yesterday. He's very upset that his constituents are being very unkind to him by calling his office and telling him to resist Donald Trump. Stop harassing him, guys. If you are one of his constituents, you got to call and say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I hurt your feelings.
No, just mail him an Israeli flag. That'll make him feel better.
Right. Yes. Say, can I sponsor you? Can I get you a vacation? Do you want to head over to Tel Aviv? I mean, you may hear some children wailing a few miles away as they die, but at least you'll be able to get some R&R. Dizzle McFizzle, because the Dems and Republicans don't care about their voters, they only care about the billionaires. Well, a lot of Democrats, yes. We do have some people stepping up. Like the other point I wanted to make too is Binder, Jasmine Crockett's politics are not my politics, right? She took Israel money, she took crypto money. At least she fights. I'll take it. At least she goes toe to toe and yells at Republicans. I'll take it. You know what I mean? Like even Democrats with better politics than her don't do that. It's driving me insane.
I don't like. How do you not, at the very least, like see where you are, even in like this historical context, like where you are in this moment of history, and not be like, I want to at least say something profound, like at the bare minimum. And they won't even do that. They won't even do that.
DSA Aaron in Atlanta. Brandon's 100%. It's the era of techno-feudalism. Giannis's book is so good on this. Deep's thoughts. This has a trickle-down impact. State and local public servants are next and will first go in red states. Yes, the Kansas City area's top employer is the federal government. John from T-Burg, I always absolutely love watching Nazis be exposed for loser fucking dweebs that they are on national television. A just society would have that Zionist asshole never allowed to speak about foreign policy ever again. Yes. Rob from Dedham, on Ralph Nader's program last week, they talked about how we need progressive Tea Party and the progressive left side of the Democratic Party needs to take the power back. I wholeheartedly agree. The left needs the Democrats to be afraid of them, and the only way to do that, I think that at this point, is withholding votes.
We need people to hold up signs to Elon Musk and Trump saying, "Get your government hands off my Medicare."
Yeah. My brain hurts. Love being degraded into a stakeholder. We are paying their fucking salaries. Master B-ater. I feel like there are so many Democrats that are jaded. They don't see anything wrong with having to change their opinions to fit the Democratic Party, not the Democratic Party changing its platform. Yeah. What now? Create wedges where you can, folks. I recently had some success on the right-wing sports internet forum by complaining about how Musk hasn't targeted the military yet with Doge. Seems like a topic that genuinely splits hardcore Trump voters. Google Steve Bannon Hot Tub says, did you all see Mark Andreessen's email hiring Daniel Penny? These guys are murderers. I didn't see his email, but I know they did hire him at Mark Andreessen because of meritocracy. And by meritocracy, I mean you killed a black guy on the subway, so...
I was honestly shocked they even received blowback from like partners that they had to put out that email, quite honestly. Like, I just thought they would all be on board with it, quite frankly. I mean, that's how insane these guys are now.
But that is a point that I wish that we had a little bit more, like, and maybe Binder, we can talk at another time, like, you know, this is more your area of expertise, but the anarcho-capitalist tech billionaire VC guys and the crime narrative fit very neatly into their desire to privatize cities and create their little fiefdoms. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing all this elevation of viral racialized crime content at a time that crime is going down. And then you have the Andreessen Horowitz guys hiring the subway killer, Daniel Penny.
Right. Right. I mean, honestly, I just think, really quickly, I just think it's just like content that gets views. It's clickbaity. It's people like watching this shit, as horrible as it is. It's in the human condition. It's human nature. But like, it also exactly does what you pointed out. It helps, like, cement their own opinion of what needs to be done. Right.
Right. All right. 5 more. Jody from Chicago. House Oversight is having Mayor Brandon Johnson, the mayors of Denver and Boston, and the country of Turkey's favorite mayor, Eric Adams, testify about their sanctuary city laws. How do you think your boy Eric Adams will do now? I think he will validate the rights narrative because he's being blackmailed. Most progressive president. Harris's appeal to men of color was to deregulate crypto. Also, if there will be an election, is your version of Poole's Civil War hyperbole. The military and intelligence agencies are likely to install a junta if Republicans tried that. All right, dude. I mean, downplay it all you want. It's still a real threat. There was January 6th, and we just had an interview with Gil Duran about how the tech right views this as like a way to destroy democracy. So if you think we're being hysterical, that's fine, but it's irresponsible for me not to point out that possibility to my audience.
Oh, by the way, you mentioned Eric Adams 2 seconds ago, and I got to say, because I'm sure you guys have mentioned it, but just in case, if you are in New York City and you want to make sure Eric Adams loses, and you are not currently registered as a Democrat,
I said this earlier.
You need to do that by tomorrow. And we should say it 100 times. And I'm going to say it 100 times because it needs to be done. I don't even care who wins at this point because there's a lot of good progressive choices. I have a pick, obviously. But yes, same. But we do have a system here where we can do ranked choice voting and have a potential to vote for a number of these people together. Eric Adams just has to lose. He needs to be gone. 100%.
He needs to be gone. Yeah, he's and I saw like he's getting real momentum. I mean, people you wouldn't expect, like the guy from SNL, what's his name, Bowen Yang, just endorsed him on social media. Like I think there's a lot of, what? Zoran.
For a second,
I thought you said Adam.
Oh no! But
damn, that's a shock.
There's a lot of like left-leaning influencers that are getting behind him. I mean, he's there's a real chance here. We got to, full court press. I'm considering doing some canvassing for him, if I have the time. Osteophalus. The Biden administration was silent about relief for Hurricane Helene, and the right was able to spin the narrative how they pleased. Then Trump showed up here, where I live in Western North Carolina, and spoke about disbanding FEMA, which was one of the main sources of federal aid after the storm. Trump has done nothing for the ongoing recovery here. Empty promises. Why won't the Democrats speak up? Yeah, I know. WTF Cody, my mom has been working on establishing a 4-year college in southeastern Kentucky. They have made plans, allocated the funds, announced it publicly, and now because of Trump's cuts and freezes, it's on hold indefinitely. And the final IM of the day. Zane, having Democrats...
People are very confused in the chat. Bowen Yang did not endorse Eric Adams. Let's make
Yes, I'm sorry. I meant to say Bowen Yang endorsed Zoran or posted about it. All right, I'm sorry. I lost the other IM. I'll try this one. Final IM of the day. Freddy Krueger. To everything Brandon said about the neoliberal conditioning also, the more that a person invests in a scam, the more fervently they'll defend the scam. Admitting that you've been bamboozled is uncomfortable, and I think that contributes to the situation. People can't admit that capital is the reason everything sucks, so they cheer on the perpetrators of their own destruction. That's well said. All right, guys. Appreciate you all. I maybe said Adams. Maybe that's why I misspoke. I mean, look,
People were like, there's a whole rant about how SNL sucks. SNL went right wing. I can't believe Bowen Yang would do such a thing.
Did I misspeak?
Maybe it might have been the comma because you said something about Adams and we talked about Zohra and then he said Bowen Yang endorsed him.
But this is the part of the show where I start to lose Bowen Yang
is like Eric Adams is going to save this city.
Bowen Yang endorsed Zohran. And change your party registration if you're not a registered Democrat in New York City. Do it by tomorrow. All right, guys. Appreciate you all. We will see you tomorrow on Friday.